Totally on.
Go.
One? Okay. So the first question is, how did you come about to teach Harry Potter and religion?
Well, I've been teaching religious studies for quite a while. And when I first started reading the Harry Potter books, both by myself and with my kids, I thought, wow, there's a lot here under the surface. And the more times I read the books, the more I realized that there was a whole lot there. In fact, there was enough for a college class. And yeah, I've had colleagues ask me, can you really teach kids books as a college class? And this is religious studies, this isn't even a literature class. But yeah, there are so many themes and so much symbolism under the surface that I do think that there's more than enough to study. There are alchemical themes, there are themes from Norse mythology, from Greek and Roman mythology, from Celtic mythology. There are reflections on good and evil. So yeah, there's a lot there.
You said you read it to your kids. What can you see that differs in between your fandom and then like their fandom? Is there like a difference in between the two?
Well, I definitely think so. I mean, first of all, I think when kids first start reading the books, they read them on a very surface level, as they are meant to be read at the first encounter. They don't really wonder about Greek or Roman names. They just think that, well, people have weird names in the wizarding world. They don't perhaps stop to reflect that, wait, we've heard about the silver hand before in Celtic mythology. And, they don't really think about alchemical themes or stuff like that. They read it as a good story. But I think, when you come back to the texts as an adult and with some more life experience, you keep finding more and more. And I think that's what makes the books really intriguing. That there's something there for readers in all kinds of levels.
Yeah, so like in all different ages you can kind of find something with them.
I think so. And I find something new every time I read through the books.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So what are your views on Harry Potter fandom in a whole, and do you believe that it could be considered religion itself, being like a fan in some cases?
Well, that's, a question that's come up in religious studies a lot. What is the relationship between a religious movement that's focused, say, on a particular sacred text, and a fandom that might be focused on either a written text or a visual text, as like in the Star Wars fandom or something like that? Obviously, there are differences. When we look at sort of, for example, the essential nature of religion, very often it deals with something that is regarded as sacred. However, there are also a lot of similarities in how a community is formed around a particular text, how people build an identity, how they become part of this larger community by means of the relationship with this text. So I do think we see some interesting similarities there. That doesn't mean that I'm going to argue that Harry Potter fandom is a religion, but I even think that in some ways, looking at how a community forms in modern fandom might also shed some light on how religious communities form around a shared text and a shared body of knowledge, even though the purpose is somewhat different.
Yes, I completely agree. That's kind of something that we've been kind of going back and forth between, is like, is the fandom considered a religion? So you thought it'd be a good idea to ask, just in case. So at what point does fandom become like kind of obsessive, do you think? Especially of Harry Potter, because there's a lot of really big fans.
I know. Well, what's considered obsessive to some isn't obsessive to others. Well, if it takes over your life and that's all you can think about, then perhaps that's a little bit much. Yeah, if you own a complete collection of all the translations of the Harry Potter books into all the 62 languages, even the ones you don't read, perhaps you're starting to go a little bit too far.
A little too far. Mm-hmm. What to you would getting a tattoo of like something in Harry Potter be like kind of going a little bit too far, or what would that mean to you, do you think?
Well, personally, I don't do tattoos, but if I did, I think that would be interesting. I think, when people choose to get tattoos, whatever they choose that is meaningful to them,
Mm-hmm.
would be great. Um, it would also probably indicate that the person thinks that the Harry Potter fandom is there to stay, so that nobody
Mm-hmm.
will say, um, when a person is in her 80s, nobody will say, what on earth is that,
Yeah.
little owl, little letter you got tattooed on your arm? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we were actually looking into some tattoos that people were doing, and there's been a lot of like dark marks and stuff, so we're looking into that as well. Yeah, it's very interesting to see what it's going to look like a few years from now. So why do you believe that Harry Potter has such an impact on this, like our generation, like as growing up with them?
Well, I think the series has been extremely popular both among kids and grown-ups because it deals with very universal themes. We talked in the Harry Potter class about archetypal themes. We talked about the notion of the child hero who defeats the great evil. And that's a story that's been told over and over again in different cultures, and I think it really resonates with human beings. This notion that a child who is still innocent and untainted by the world has this great power
Mm-hmm.
to defeat whatever evil lurks out there. I also think, that the Harry Potter series articulates some really interesting psychological truths about coming to terms with death and mortality, about sort of growing up and finding one's place in society.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Harry Potter series doesn't end with Harry sort of as the Lord of the Wizarding World. It ends with him as a husband and father, ready to send his kids off to school, sort of taking his place in adult society. That's where his childhood journey ends, sort of as a man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a coming of age story as well.
Mm-hmm. Have like you seen that in any other like really popular books in this generation in this time?
Well, I think because the Harry Potter series is so very rich in characters, there are so many possible ways that the readers can identify themselves.